gonna happen when I'm gone. I mean, that's
What the heck?
I'm
No pressure, Michael. No pressure. Yeah, that'll be really nice.
All right, does it show up as live sheets now?
Yes, at least on my end.
I assume you don't want us to turn on our video until it's time to present?
Whatever works for you.
And do you want me to have the content pulled up on my screen or just refer to the one that will be on the screen in the council?
I think council will be able to open up the maps. I think they record what is on their end, so I think Mary Elizabeth can navigate for us.
Okay.
Yes, just tell me, I'll scroll down so you can kind of see what it looks like. Just tell me which document you want me to pull up and I'll click on it. Tell me when
Okay.
to change the slide.
Okay.
Perfect.
Let me see it. It's a little backwards.
And John, you said that Robert and Michael were here. I didn't catch that third name, the other person from Public Works.
Mike Holden.
Okay, perfect.
He's our capital facilities, capital projects manager.
Awesome.
So when we build these things, he'll be
In charge. Okay.
Yeah. What do you say?
John, you mentioned you're going on vacation soon. Are you doing anything fun?
We go to Vegas every year for Christmas.
Oh, fun.
I have family there, and it is fun. It's nice to my wife's brothers are really fun to be around.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you gonna go see the sphere?
We don't have tickets to see anything. I mean, we've seen the outside of it. No, I don't have plans to do that this year. We'll see.
Yeah, I've heard really great things about it, but nothing on their schedule has interested me enough to actually pull me in. So,
Yeah.
Okay, Chair Fry, we're ready to go.
Good morning. We'll call this meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commission Member Fry,
Present.
Commission Member Bissell,
Here.
Commission Member Green,
Here.
Commission Member Bicknell,
Here.
Commission Member Teal,
Here.
and ex officio Mr. Dumont. Okay, we do have a quorum.
Great. I don't believe we have any public comment, do we? All right. So you've had a chance to review the items in the consent agenda. I need a motion to approve the consent. So moved. And a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you. We have JB here with us, Elizabeth Smith, and Lad. I'm sorry, I can't read your last name there, Lad.
Jeez.
Thank you. Elizabeth's going to give us an update on, we have the 60% draft plan that was just got to you guys recently. Not asking for you guys to make any decisions on that, but Elizabeth will give us an update on that, and then also the draft CIP. And then we have 3 conceptual park layouts these are parks that for land and parks that we don't own, or, it's just kind of some conceptual ideas of areas where we see we need parks. So with that, I'll turn it over to Elizabeth.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. As John mentioned, my name is Elizabeth Smith. We met a couple months ago to go over some of the goals and policies for the parks plan. But today, like John mentioned, we'll be going over the 60% draft. We'll review the CIP table in its current format, and then Lad, our landscape architect, will be presenting the park concepts. So if we could start with the draft plan, Mary Elizabeth, yep, that one. So we can just have it on the screen. I know sometimes it gets a little dizzy as we're scrolling through everything. But you should have the plan in front of you. And just to highlight some of the updates, those are in red text. So starting, if we could get to the history and timeline section. I think this is the next section. Yep, so right about here. So the current plan has a history timeline through 2017. And so I kind of highlighted in that yellow there, if there are any events between 2018 and now that we could include that you would like to memorialize as part of the history of College Place, that would be fantastic. I also included that this year we're reconstructing Lions Park, and it will include new amenities and a splash pad, playground, restrooms, all of that. So I look to staff and the PAR board to provide some important milestones of College Place history that we could include in this timeline, just to keep things current. And if there are any data points in the current history timeline that maybe aren't as important or should be reworded or revamped, I welcome all of those comments. Then I think we can scroll to the next section. So demographics and basically the community profile as a whole. We've updated all of this data to reflect current data from the old plan. So we have demographics, age, if you could scroll a little bit more. We have household size, income, veteran status, disability status, kind of a handful of those things. And they've all been updated to reflect current information from census and American Community Survey. The next section that had some updates is the goals and objectives. And like I mentioned, we have met a couple months ago to go over these. So this is just reflecting on what the group discussed and what we decided with staff on those updates. I won't go over all the changes, but kind of the big ones are we created goal statements rather than just goal topics. So those are highlighted here in red, and then all the other changes to each goal or policy are also highlighted in red. Let's see if we could scroll to the next update. We'll go through all of the goals and policies. Thank you, Mary Elizabeth. As she's scrolling, I'll get to the next one. So we just included active transportation into the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan. Active transportation is human-powered movement for commuting or travel, primarily walking or cycling. So we included those. If you could, let's see, keep scrolling just a little bit. Yep, so this is where we've included active transportation in the trail section for our park standards. And then in the next section here, I wanted to highlight this. So the previous plan followed the NRPA, which is the National Recreation and Parks Association standards. Based on recent guidance, it's been recommended that you take those as a very baseline standard, and then you mold and adapt those standards to create something new that is individualized and specific to your community. So basically this this paragraph here says that we're just kind of starting fresh and creating something that is very unique and special to College Place rather than following the NRPA standards. Let's see. So the new addition to the plan, this is not included in the current plan. So the acquisition and land donation standards sounds like there's been a couple instances in the past where, the city is acquiring property or land has been donated to the city. And so this is a metric that can be used to follow if the city wants to accept or deny property. And this is a good metric to show, is it a good fit for the city and the goals? Okay, and then you can keep going. So park inventory. So the new parks that we have included in our park inventory list are Ledbetter, Maple and Whitman, Perseverance Park, Stone Creek, and Sunset Villas. And so I've included the proposed amenities based on the concept plans that we've either created or things that are being built, like at Lions Park. Those will be reflected in red as well. So I know I kind of quickly threw a lot of information at you. Those are just kind of the big highlight changes in the plan. And like John said, we don't need any decisions on the draft plan as it is today. I would just ask if it follows a good timeline for the city and the PAR board, if we could get comments back by January 10th, that would allow us some time to, excuse me, implement or coordinate on those changes or comments, and hopefully have something to present to the PAR board on January 24th. And if anyone needs to check me, I have those dates right, that would be great. But yeah, we'd like to present the final plan on the 24th. So comments from staff and PAR board by the 10th of January would be awesome. And then I'll open it up to any questions, comments. Hearing none. Okay, we can close.
Under the goals and
Oh, yeah.
objectives,
Mhm.
I'm wondering if there was, so you've got 5 there. Are they in any particular order or just?
They are not.
Okay. I would like to see community oriented be number 1.
Okay.
I think we lead with that. I think that is inclusive of the entire community. And then I don't know if anybody has anything beyond that, but that just, I know sometimes when we don't lead with the community first and we put something else ahead of it, it sort of throws people off the trail of what we're trying to achieve. So
Yeah, no, that's great. We can definitely make that change. I think they just follow the existing plan in the order that they were in the report. So we will definitely get that reorganized to reflect that. And if you have a preferred order for the rest of the goals, we can chat about that, or you can send an email to John or Mike and we can get that reorganized for you.
Yeah, I see. We could do community first, and then that could be alphabetical after that. And it would achieve both purposes.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay.
any other comments?
Yeah.
Leif, did you want to work your wedding into the historical timeline? Okay.
Funny. Okay, so we will open up the CIP table. Thank you. So we basically took this list, kind of came through a handful of conversations. So we took what was existing in the CIP in the current plan. We reviewed the demands and need analysis from the current plan, incorporated any development that's happened since, kind of filter that into this list, and then also with conversations with city staff. So I'm not going to go through every single one, but this has a priority level assigned to it, the location for the park, and then what the improvement is, and then the quantity. So I'll let you look at that at another time if you haven't already. If there are any, quick comments, we can go over that, but I think everyone's probably itching to look over the concepts.
And I would also know that we need to let Public Works have a look over this
Okay.
CIP plan.
Perfect.
Because they haven't had the opportunity.
Perfect. I will make a note of that. Any other comments or questions on the CIP list?
I'm not sure where this question is, but the working names that we have for this, how were those names arrived at?
Location or property owner, they're very much draft. So if you have any really cool name ideas, we can share those with Mike and John and let them kind of figure out what we want, but they're not permanent as far as I know.
Yeah, we would have to go, if we ever acquired any of these sites, we would have to go through a naming process.
Yeah.
So in the plan, just to kind of address that question for any future readers, once it's finalized, I can make a note in there that says that the park names are not final. They're based on land ownership or location, and the city would go through a naming process. So just so that's
Yeah,
clear.
I think that's wise to do because catch the attention. Sometimes people go sideways on something just because they don't like the name of it. And if they know that that's just a placeholder,
Yeah.
I think that's smart.
Yep, we can absolutely do that. Okay. Any other questions or comments on the CIP list or the draft plan? No? Okay. I also included the parks facility map. Mary Elizabeth, you don't need to open that. But that just kind of shows all the existing and future parks, just for if you're visual, kind of helps orient you in the city. But I will pass it over to Lad. I'll let him kind of go through all the park concepts and yeah, we can just, Lad, I'll let you take it over.
So
Excellent.
Lad, if it's easier for you to share your screen, that's an option. So you can kind of point out things you're talking about.
Okay.
It's up to you. But all of the concepts that Lad's going to show us are in the agenda. So you guys can look at them after the meeting or share them or whatever.
Okay.
Do you want to do that, Lad, or what would you like to do?
Might be
Okay,
easier
let
if
me-
I just share in. That's a good
Let me
idea.
try to figure out how to do that. I think I got it.
I have one question about the visual of this. I note that it's just park centric, whether our school facilities, should they be on any map with our parks, or is that completely separate? I'm thinking about fields and that the people use as community resource.
Oh, so in terms of our existing park map inventory, and we can pull that up and take a look at it and have a discussion about it if you'd like. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's step back. Sorry, Lad. Let's go ahead and pull up
worries.
the park. What was it called?
The parks facility map.
So,
I appreciate that the schools are on there, but I guess I was imagining a visual of perhaps a concentric similar circles around the school facilities if they're integrated. If our vision is that they're not integrated, then kind of a moot point.
I think it need to be differentiated. They are functional, important. I believe we count them in our inventory.
I didn't hear that last.
I mean, it was part of the survey,
Statement.
so there was questions.
Yeah, I do think we need to have like two maps though, because per RCO guidelines, if I recall, if you included those in the overarching inventory, it would actually count against us for the need points to go get money to fix parks and get new parks. So for the community, it may make sense to have one map that has everything so they see it. But as far as a map, so that way we don't get docked points, but with Recreation Conservation Office, I think this map is good, so that way we get the full points and can compete.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely do that and we'll coordinate with you, just make sure we get it just right.
I guess one piece I think of is bike paths or transportation. That should include both of those, but yeah, I appreciate your point. Say parks are parks and we get funding for parks. Yeah.
Yeah, we can work with our GIS person, Justin Bearlocker, so we can include some like more bike and ped amenities on the overall map as well.
Okay, lad, I made it so that multiple people can share, so I'll stop sharing and hope that it works the way it's supposed to.
Okay, thank you. All right, you should be seeing a park near Sunset Villa. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So this park up near Wallula Avenue and Damson Avenue, the park itself is, because it's near the senior living, we're looking at some different courts in addition to the fields. And in this particular concept, we start with the pickleball court down in the bottom left with 6 courts that have some shade canopies above them before it gets to 2 basketball courts. The playground area next to it, it's about 5,000 square feet with restrooms adjoining, and then a large pavilion with a capacity of around 100. In the big fields up above, we have a U12 soccer field, which is about 80% of a full-size soccer field. If ever needed, that U14 sort of grayed out soccer field size is shown going east to west. And likewise, if you did smaller fields like the U8 size soccer field, that's shown there on the right. Then in addition to these fields and the courts, there is a path that loops around the edge and then we're going to join with public sidewalks on Damson Avenue and Wallula Avenue. And so you could do small loops around soccer fields or various ones throughout the park itself. And this park is showing 60 parking stalls. And I guess another thing to think about is the approach coming off of coming from the east. We do have that lawn area to sort of give that park-like feel before it goes into the courts and hardscape at the top. And then also pickleball courts being located farther away from interior areas where it might be too close to residential due to the noise generated by pickleball. So this is that first park near the Sunset Villas. Any questions on this one? So some key things were the walking paths, the flexible fields, and then the courts. All right, the next one we have is down at the Ledbetter property. This is a smaller park, and it would be if Davis Avenue extended south and 10th Street extended west, this would be right on the corner. It's a smaller park. In this case, there are a bunch of large existing trees on the east side and along Garrison Creek on the north. So in this park, we put some native areas under the trees with paths and picnic shelters, a place to come and explore and do some passive recreation. Then amongst that, a lot of trails that lead to more an active central area with a playground. It's about 4,000 square feet, a smaller pavilion that the capacity of around 50, and a small, just 2 family style restroom. And then the interesting thing are these 3 circles on the left, 2 basketball concepts with 3 hoops in the 60-foot diameter, and then this large lawn mound. It would be probably about 6 feet high. Sort of imagine a big type dome coming out of the grass. Kids, I'm sure, would have lots of fun playing in it. Gives them sort of options for playing up in the landscape. Then surrounded by a few little grassy areas. This one has 29 parking stalls. And again, the nature wandering area along Garrison Creek and along the large trees on the east side. Any questions on this one? All right. The next park we're going to look at is the one we're calling the Stone Creek Park along Stone Creek. We're looking at the main park itself would be in the green area in the center, but we are looking at doing some connections with trails that go from Till Avenue on the west, where Mojoinia Road swoops down to the west, and then College Avenue on the east. We can create some connections off of the road along the creek and create a trail system in here that also would be connecting south to a future high school and then to the adjacent developments that are being proposed in this area. This thin line here is the extent of the FEMA floodplain delineation, just for reference when we look at it closer in a minute. And then these dark hatched area are wetland areas. So the upland area that we can use for park amenities is primarily on this sort of south central area, which I'll show in a minute. So imagine several different loops of trails. You could do the length of it, or you could come in and do some loops around the amenity areas to give different options for walking and running. We have about this area over here, you have 1/3 of a mile to loop all the way around. So three laps and you've got a mile. Or this one over here, which creates a loop, is about 0.65 miles, just for reference. And then looking at the amenity area, zoomed in. So in this one, there are some proposed townhomes and single family lots down here on the west side, and then this apartment complex on the southeast side. The north upland, which we're not showing, is primarily single family lots in small and large sizes. And there is a bluff as it slopes down to Stone Creek. So here on the west side, we kind of have this hockey centric area that could be hockey in the winter or skate hockey or similar things, ball hockey in the summer, with a rink building with restrooms, the playground adjacent to it, a large pavilion. Again, this one would be about a capacity of 100 that bleeds off into lawn areas around the edge, and then trails that link into those loops that we were talking about. And as we cross the road, this large park area over here, we have a central flexible field area where we can fit U12 soccer fields. Again, these are about 80% size of a full-size soccer. And then a central playground, some basketball courts, a large pavilion with a couple of restrooms, and then a medium pavilion over here with 2 restroom stalls like on Ledbetter Park. And then the playground over here would be more nature play style that could maybe bleed down into the wetlands area that go along Stone Creek, provide an interesting play area adjacent to the pickleball. Over here we have 12 pickleball courts and then room for another soccer field here and then before the edge of the property on the east side. One thing to note is to make this fit, when we first did it, you can see the edge of the FEMA floodplain along here on the 2 edges. There were originally planned 6 development lots right here, which left little room for anything else besides some squeezing fields. And then what we have labeled here as future private drive is currently an area for parking lots, and it had 4 apartment buildings along the edge of it. So we eliminated 1 row of townhomes, the 6 single family lots, and the 4 apartment buildings to get this to fit in this position. So we kept the structures outside of the floodplain area with the soccer fields and half of the pickleball courts going into floodplain areas that could be prone to flooding from time to time. Then we have the parking, a little bit of parking right here in the back of the townhomes, with most of the parking adjacent over here on the southeast side, and then with parking over here by the hockey rink. Again, the idea is to provide trails and passive recreation along the Stone Creek and create some looping trails and some pathways with activity zones between them. All right, any questions on Stone Creek? Comment?
So it's okay to build a park facility within the floodplain, but not in the wetland.
Correct. Things that you're okay that they flood occasionally. So it's not uncommon for playgrounds to even be located in floodplains. In this case, the only playground we put in was the sort of nature play area, which anticipate being kind of fit into a flood zone area. And then as far as fields and courts, it's not uncommon for those to occasionally be located in flood prone areas.
Lad, just one thing from the school district, as you kind of talk these through, could you just reference that as a future school site and not peg it as a high school? Because we don't know what it will be. I already get accused that it's already been built. So if you just keep it pretty generic, that'd be helpful.
Yes.
And then one thing too, Lad, with that earlier map where it showed the connections between the high school, this new park, and then the eventual new other school. I'm thinking it'd be good if you could maybe have offline discussion with Jim, because I think it'd be neat to have a concept, because as we talk past the school thing, there is rooms down there to do like athletic fields and so forth. So maybe develop a schematic of that too.
Yeah, they reached out, and I can't get ahead of the board, so I got to be really careful. Yeah, we've got 40 acres, and there's some ideas, but and we plan to be really generous, I think, with fields and open spaces, but until we get out at least a few more years, I think we're pretty early.
And so just to clarify that comment, we're talking about getting with Jim with the school district about looking at the way the fields might go in with the high school. And then the second comment that went along with it was be careful about getting too far ahead of that. Was that right?
Well, it's not a high school, it's a school of some type. So basically, my comment was us talking with him, and it sounds like you may have already done that, but I just wanted a footnote in the plan about athletic fields or something of some type, so that way as state grant funds become available, we can poach them, because the issue is that if we aren't at least somewhat descriptive, then we're frozen from the grant funds. So that's the issue.
Yeah, whatever verbiage that you can use that says that the district is looking forward to partnering and providing athletic fields and green spaces that will be community usage and so forth. We're fine with just mapping it out. All of a sudden people start saying that it's already been built.
Where's the public process?
Yeah. So.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lad. I appreciate you going through all of those. So it sounds like the only big comment was updating the label on the Stone Creek overall map just to say future school and not designate the level. Were there any other comments or changes that PAR board or city staff would like to recommend or suggest on any of the three concepts?
I have a comment. I think we can all agree that pickleball's not going away. And I mean, Walla Walla has so much extreme weather, both summer heat as well as winter. If there's a possibility for some sort of covering for any of the courts, I mean, it would be definitely a draw that would, be competitive with other courts in the community. Yeah, that would be my comment. Obviously, indoor is probably a totally different conversation, but maybe covered or shaded or something would be great.
So we do you think we want them in both locations covered, both at the park near Sunset Villas and the park at Stone Creek, or just prioritize maybe Stone Creek because it's the larger pickleball system? Thoughts, anyone? Cover them all so we get them in the budget and then size them down when we get the actual numbers.
I think maybe if you looked at the types of trees strategically that tall trees that also provide shade could be some natural way to do that. Obviously, you want ones that don't drop a million leaves and right into the courts. So, but you know, I agree. I think looking at some way to do some shade, but also how to include natural shade from trees. I think this one to me lends itself to that because it's really nature based. So this would be the one where I'd say if we could get it to be natural, I think it'd be really neat.
Okay, and then maybe we'll cover up the ones at the near Sunset Villas. Great.
I'm going to go ahead and make a comment here. I'm not sure I want to step back a step here and think in terms of the bigger picture of College Place and what its needs are. I see what occurs to me on this Stone Creek is that there's an effort to put an awful lot in what I thought was a pretty big space, but it seems crowded to me. And you know, when we think about what College Place needs in the future, maybe this is correct to put this sort of density of recreational opportunities in one spot. You know, when you stop and look at some of the plans for the Christensen development, it's pretty dense too. So maybe this is the right way to go. But as a group, I think it'd be wise for us to stop for a minute or at least put a little thought towards what we can do to make this Stone Creek Park maybe in some place a little more connected to nature and a little more introspective and not just about athletics. Maybe there's a special spot where, you know, the trail goes that makes that more accessible. But to me, this seems very dense, like we're trying to push too much into a small bag. Now, how that balance works in the long term, maybe it's perfect, but that's what strikes me when I look at this. It seems like we're trying too hard to put too much in a small spot. Yeah, it's something that strikes me as more athletic and less park.
Lad, can I ask, what's the ratio of the active recreation versus the passive? Do you have those numbers, like acreage wise?
Let me pull that up. Hold on.
Because there is a lot of, I mean, I hear what you're saying. But there's a lot of passive recreation opportunities for walking, sitting, contemplating. There's a number of, if we were able to expand this park all the way over to College Avenue, it's pretty extensive from that standpoint.
So this part,
just looking at the map picture, it looks like the concept map really, I mean, it says there, it's a fairly small part of it just based on the road. It's maybe a third of the whole map.
sorry to share. So looking back at the large area, the area in green is about 24.5 acres. The area in white that we carved out is about 12 acres. So we're about half of it is the sort of active amenity area. And then the other half would be in the wetlands and the surrounding area next to it.
I wanted to add to that too. There's a part of me that was kind of feeling the same. Especially looking at the developments at Sunset Villas, it's kind of nice seeing a relatively small park that's very athletic focused and having something that feels like that's the primary function of the park. I think that's one of the areas we don't really have that yet, which I like. But when you combine kind of all of these assets together, it does feel like we all of a sudden just have a ton of athletic focused parks, and which, you know, there's been development around the greater region with more of that as well. So with all of that together, I'm kind of agreeing that it feels like, do we really need 12 more pickleball courts in addition to that and the couple that we're putting over off of Whitman? And, you know, like as you look at the whole picture, it feels like we're going from kind of 0 to 100 all at once. And to that point, I think it's not about maybe changing the assets as much as maybe we just decrease the density of them, especially as we look at this one.
Yeah, I concur. We well stated. I think we should be thinking about what the purpose of each of these parks really is, and if there are some that are more athletic oriented, that we should be thinking about what people are thinking on their way there. One of the things that I remember saying or talking about when I first joined this group was how important the impact of parks are to a community and their sense of what it means to be part of a community. And I pointed at what happened in New York with Central Park. And I know it's grandiose, but there were people there who really thought about what nature meant in an urban environment. And if you've ever been to New York and you go there, you see that there's a boundary and there's a psychological benefit to what Central Park does for New York. And I'm curious, this is, I think, our Central Park. This is the biggest, most facility-rich potential place. What is it supposed to do? And then we should be building towards that intention. What do we want people to feel on their way there? What do we want them to interact and do while they're there? And how does that go to the goals of our community orientation? And if it's just athletics, okay. But if there's something more that we want to capture, this is our shot at the biggest, best park in College Place.
And I think I would add to it, it feels like when I look at the big map, like I had in my mind this very natural focused thing, right, with the trails and things. And then when we hone in on that smaller amenity area, it really just feels like a bunch of sidewalks, like that. It very much felt like a different picture of what I was feeling. And so like to that same point, I feel like this really being a park that's far more focused on some of that passive stuff, not that the other things aren't there, but that they're woven into the whole picture, but they don't become the whole picture.
Chair Fry and I had discussed having some sort of musical themed playground equipment. I've seen that in other places, specifically Klamath Falls, Oregon. And also there are discussions going on about College Place forming sister city relationships with a place in Jungapeo, Mexico, and a place in Italy. And I wonder if there is some kind of garden or structure or something that, could be, included in there as an homage to that. So.
I think themes can play a really important role towards, stating what the park is for. I know there's a park in Boise that my wife and I visited when we were on a trip somewhere. And it was about cancer awareness. It was really kind of interesting, and about people who've struggled with cancer. And my wife is one of those people, so it was meaningful for her, and also to us as a family. But I'm not saying that's the right theme but themes can really help shape, that feeling that I'm talking about. If you're designing it with intention towards the way people feel when they're in the space, I think you're on the track towards something that's really good and timeless.
I have a question about the board's, how you feel about large buildings kind of being on the peripheral edge of a large amenity like this, and what if there's any strong preferences either way. I have some, but I'm not going to share them.
Do you mean in terms of the development that's happening around it?
Yes. And almost within the block, essentially, the way we have it drawn here. And we're working, so some of the footprints you're seeing here are conceptual stuff that we've seen and shared with JUB. So that's why they're in there. But, you know, if there's a strong preference to not border, you know, and isolate a beautiful park with these sort of structures, then I would like to know that.
Well, from my point of view, you know, I don't know what the utility of the buildings are close by. Obviously, you know, things are going to change in College Place, and that's going to have to be managed. But you know, I go back to you know, pointing at New York. I mean, there's a contrast there, right? I mean, right up to the border, boom, you've got giant skyscrapers. Is that the right way to do it? I don't know. What it tells me, though, is somebody who knew what they were doing did Central Park. And they made the boundary very strong because the interests that would be consuming that property would be very powerful. So the response to that and the fact that the park is still there and it's not been, you know, it's like a commonly agreed, hey, we're going to leave the park alone because it's an important space. Whether the buildings are close by or not, the contrast, I mean, I think it's possible to do, whether it's there close or not. It's not going to be an open field anymore. We know that for sure.
I guess related comment would be in other areas where I've been, you walk out of the park and there's consumer services right there. There's ice cream place, there's restaurants, and yeah, in other places, there's restaurants in the middle of the park. And that can be very enjoyable also. So I guess I don't have a strong preconception one way or the other. What sort of buildings are?
So those two large footprints there that are, I would say, within the park. The way I look at it, I see the future public street boundaries, and anything contained north or, you know, in that, I feel like those buildings are in the park, and I believe they're like townhomes or something like that. I don't have a problem with high density, you know, like you say, like Central Park in New York. All of those buildings are outside of that public realm. They're on private property, and you have the public street, and then you have this massive, you know, wildlife in the middle of all of those large buildings. And that's, I think if we pulled those buildings out of that block, that park, I think it, you know, when I envision people walking along the perimeter of that on the sidewalks and looking into a park and not having to try to look through buildings to see the park. It kind of hides it to me if you have them within that block.
I think for me, I think it has as much to do with the design of the buildings being put there as anything else. I think that they can be designed in such a way that they really kind of feel like they're intended to be there. I think coming from, you know, a more urbanly dense area, I'm used to those two things coinciding quite a bit. You know, especially within, you know, like west suburbs of Portland and stuff. There are a lot of neighborhoods, especially with like row houses and townhouses and things like that, where the parks and the neighborhoods just kind of blends together. So I think it can be a really cool thing, because then it becomes, I think, especially for people who end up living in places like those, it just feels like a very different environment. It doesn't feel like, you know, you've got apartments and you've got parking lots and that's it. It just kind of weaves everything together. So it feels like this is part of life rather than these being two very separate, contrasting things. So I think it can be a really cool thing if it's managed well. It just has to be intentional.
I think that's what's cool about Central Park is the juxtaposition, right, between those giant size skyscrapers and then that natural.
I was gonna say, I think there's a way you can intertwine the buildings like that and have it be part of it. A park that's a lot like that is if you're in Richland, Howard Ammon Park along the Columbia River. There's sections of that where there is a road border, but then there's other sections where you'll have like a hotel or a condo complex in it too. But yeah, it all flows. So I think there's a way to mimic how that goes down at Howard Ammon Park.
You know, when I can't remember what question came across my email, because I get a few emails, but that you know, Leif's bringing me back to kind of my original inclination, and I can't remember what was asked, but I thought, it doesn't seem like that fit. And it was a court of some kind that didn't fit with my sort of perception of what we were heading towards. And I just wonder, with our art district designation, if perhaps maybe thinking about, local art sculptures, a fountain in this park, I like the ice. I know the ice rink is a push. And how could you do that so that it was a community thing, as part of that? But I think, climbing things for kids, but still keep capturing what that portion of our city is. I think I agree. I'm pulled that way as well, and have been. So
what I'm hearing is that we need to really seriously revamp this conceptual layout to make it more of a grand, I think you heard everything. So we need to revamp it. Take out a lot of the active recreation, and we probably really need to take a close look at what our needs are in terms of, like, do we really need this many pickleball courts in our community, and things like that. So
I think one thing I'll add too is I think it's easy, looking at this map, we see all these soccer fields, but in reality, we're going to see a lot of lawn, right? Like that's the thing too, is from this view, it does appear to be more dense than it's going to feel in reality on the ground. So I think that's important to call out too.
mm-hmm.
Forgive me, as I haven't really been too involved in this planning process, but this all looks fantastic. But what strikes me from a public works standpoint is we have one park employee. As part of this planning process, is there thoughts or recommendations on staffing levels in order to be able to operate and maintain things like this?
What I would ask JUB is maybe we develop some sort of metric of what that would require in concert with Public Works and put it in the plan. Because I mean, even as we've had the current parks with the tree grant, we programmed in to add another Park Arbor employee, and then they'll be going onward. But as we grow, we'll need additional staff.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sure there's, like we do for custodial, I'm sure there's square footage and complexities as far as how many restrooms and those sorts of things. But that's probably our recommendation, maybe perhaps the city council. Is that how that would work?
It'd be a recommendation of city council. I mean, this is far off. I mean, Walla Walla is grappling with this question right now. Luckily, because we've been very successful with grants, we don't need to make this decision as near term. But really for that whole staffing and maintaining all this stuff, once we have it, I'm just going to be blunt. At a future point, I think we're in the council can essentially assume it and control it, but it would not surprise me if we eventually had to do like a metropolitan park district that had a little bit of taxing authority to maintain all this stuff, and the city council can essentially run that. So when I left the city of Colfax, that was one of the things they voted to create, because it's a city of 2,800 people, yet it has 14 parks and 400 acres and no money. So, and a golf course and a pool. So, and they voted to create it. So I just want to throw that out there, because unlike other states, the problem is with parks in general in Washington is if you don't create that metropolitan park district, it's another item with recurring expense, which means it's competing against your police and fire to a point, although we have an ambulance utility, so not as much anymore. But still, it then gets into that competition pool, and the REIT 2 money the thing is, that money can be used for capital, but the problem is they never address the whole operational maintenance side of stuff. So you can build it, but then you're like on your own after that point. So if you look at their budget proposal in the next biennium, they're actually proposing to bring a metropolitan park district to their voters because they're in a much dire predicament. But I just want to throw it out, especially as we get to the point of having these additional parks, that's probably going to have to be something we grapple with in the future. And I don't know if we put language about in the plan somewhere about at some point as all stuff comes online about at least exploring the whole metropolitan park district thing. But I think it's important to have candor to the public because this stuff isn't going to fix itself and things like cost. I mean, I don't like paying stuff either, but that's how the world works. So
I think then that was kind of overlaps a little bit with what I was going to say. Looking at the parks plan, it feels like having a metric that determines what we need for maintenance of these parks should be a part of the parks plan, because that's such a vital part. Like if we have these amazing facilities but don't have the capability or manpower or funding to maintain them, what are we doing? Like that's that we're shooting ourselves in the foot, and potentially overtaxing valuable employees and staff members that we don't want to see get burned out because we are expecting too much of them. So I really do think that we need to have some kind of that metric built into that parks plan if we're going to be having plans like these.
Agreed. I think that that's for long-term sustainability and quality of those parks.
Hey, it's an excellent question, and it deserves attention. The fact of the matter is, it's all fun to look at your shiny car that you're going to buy, but when it comes time to make the payments, that can add up. It needs to be considered carefully. Now, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong here, but part of the plan with this community is to grow, and the people who are going to inhabit places like the Christensen development are going to be additional, probably taxpayers. So there's going to be, hopefully, in the process of growing the parks, we're also growing the population and growing the tax base. So it will hopefully bring, someone needs to think about it, but it will bring about a natural sort of ability to support it as we go. But it might be good to think about this park in terms of phases. And we know the property is going to be part of the plan. How do we do phase one? How do we do phase two? And maybe this represents phase three. We're stair stepping rather than jumping all in, and everybody's going to have to bear the cost of it. As the amenities are justified, they're additionally installed. And that might help address some of the questions, about how do we maintain all this. If we, buy all the options all at once, that's probably going to be painful at some point.
The one thing I just want to mention, especially in the state of Washington, that's quite different from the other states, which ties back to my whole metropolitan park district comment, is when you grow as population, money incrementally increasing is partial. And what I mean by that is when you have commerce, you'll get additional sales tax, and that part does incrementally go up, as does utility tax. The one thing that does act as a major drag, though, is the property tax system in this state, because the problem is, on average, even before COVID and all that, your inflation has tended to trend in the median of between like 2 and 3%. In this state, even if council authorizes it, you're basically the top that you can levy is 1%. So the problem is you have inflation like this going at 2 and 3, and you have your ceiling at 1%. So you can make that but utility tax and sales tax, but in other states, you can typically index it with inflation, and here you can't. So it's like you have a bigger gap you're having to overcome. So that's why I think it's important to mention that park district thing may be something at some point we need to deal with, because you can overcome that gap with grants and stuff for a time, but as that gap gets bigger, I don't know if you can keep pulling magic tricks in perpetuity. So I'm just throwing it out there.
So if I'm understanding then, Mike, what you're saying is you kind of have like one shot to make it what you want it to be.
Yeah,
Is that what I'm hearing?
Essentially, because since this is a new neighborhood, and here's the deal, since we've done a lot of public investment in the area with the Majania Road project coming online, because developer would have had to do that, and with the grants, we've stepped up and done a lot of this. So the deal we're finessing with them is like, hey, we stepped up on all this road, water, wastewater infrastructure. Now you step up on the park. So I do believe as far as installing the park, we can put a ton of that on them, which is great. So that's why we need to have the vision of what we want. But the cautionary tale in all of that is that once this stuff is developed and let's say they pay for it, we are going to have to maintain it and so forth. And yeah, we're going to have those additional homes. And for the first like couple of years, that is going to be a bump in revenue because that's new property tax. However, because you have that 1% ceiling and your inflation's going between 2 and 3%, as the years go on, you're going to get this effect. And when it gets like that, that's when you have a major issue. So
Sounds like a wonderfully designed system.
yeah, Washington's the only state that has that 1%. I mean, I get on paper they thought it was a good idea, but they should have like learned the concept of like math, because indexing to inflation is like a key concept. So
Any other comments?
I just kind of wanted to follow up after Robert's question. It was a really good point, bringing up maintenance and staffing and all of that. In the facility integrity section of the goals and policies of the plan, there are two updates that we've added. So implementing reservation fees for park facilities to meet community demand and generate revenue. So although that might not, create enough revenue to staff a whole nother employee that will have a revenue source. But then policy 10 also says develop long-term staffing plan and budget for park maintenance as the needs and facilities increase. So it is something we are thinking about, although I think based on recommendations and conversations, it would be a good idea to add a matrix in the plan now and not just have it for something in the future. So I just kind of wanted to assure, staff and power board, we are thinking about it, but we will make it more of a priority and include something in the plan and work with Public Works on how that's done correctly.
Yeah, thank you. You caught that. I was gonna say, work with Robert and his team, so.
Yes.
and I mean, I don't know about park board's opinion on this. I'm not saying do it or anything, but I think it's important to be upfront with the community, whether it's an objective goal, something in there. I think we put in some sort of language that as we grow our system and then we're having to maintain it, at least explore that metropolitan park district thing, because we can do the grants and so forth, but we are going to hit a brick wall at some point. It's math, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, I think adding that component and making it generic enough that it could be that or other future funding sources that will help support long-term upkeep and so forth. Yeah.
Okay. Lots of really good conversation on the concepts. I really appreciate all the comments and willingness to share thoughts. And thank you again, Lad, for going through all of these. I kind of want to just go through my notes quickly and kind of make sure I've highlighted all the important things. So fixing the label for the future high school to just be future school. Incorporating shade, whether that's with structures or trees, and being strategic about that. The overarching theme, I think, is we need to rework Stone Creek, whether it's reducing amenities, creating phases, figuring out what the tone or the theme is for Stone Creek. I think just overall we need to kind of revisit that. So I have a couple notes in here about that. They're go playing off themes like a musical theme, playground, or collaborating with sister cities opportunities, art district, sculptures, fountains, and then metric for employees, maintenance, operations, and then the Metropolitan Park District. Are there any other key items from our conversation that I might have missed that you want me to make sure I highlight in my meeting notes?
It sounds good to me, but there is one thing I would like to add, which is we've talked about the Winterfest intention at off and on over the last few years. If we are thinking about how Winterfest plays in this park, that might be really important to creating the infrastructure or the ideas that will drive that, if that's still what we want to do. But there was a Winterfest idea that at one point we thought would be really good. We're kind of like out of phase with what Walla Walla is doing, so we can get a lot more people here to enjoy the facility. We also think about Farmers Market. Where is that going to be ultimately held? Is it going to stay Lions? Probably, who knows? But if those sorts of events are important to the community, sort of being intentional about the space might be a good time to think about that.
Agreed.
So, like adding an amphitheater kind of deal?
Well, I mean, this is amphitheater part of what we're thinking when it comes to Winterfest, or are we talking more about, something you do along a walking trail, sort of a light sort of show thing?
I mean, I really.
Or events? Are we talking about events?
Yeah, I mean, really, the key thing with events, like what hit, like the big issues at Lions Park, frankly, that we're fixing was the whole lack of appropriate electrical system and so forth. So it's just as these things get developed, make sure put in the appropriate conduit, the plugs, the outlets, and everything, so that you can do some. Because you don't have electrical, you only have, frankly, anything at that point for events. So I think it's just important as we do get to the critical mass stage of developing these, that you put in that stuff, so that way we don't have to come in later and having to redo a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, but it'd be really cool if the parade ended somewhere near and then it was a big whole thing continue on in that area, as I was just thinking. But Elizabeth, one thing I thought, I don't know how you could maybe put this in there, but the conversation about the complement, that the building structures being complementary in nature, something to that extent along the edge of the park.
Okay. Yep, I'll make that a note here.
Okay.
I've got that added.
Anything else? All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Lad. Appreciate you being here.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you again, everyone, for your comments and the great conversation this morning. I will get some meeting notes prepared and share those with Mike and John, and then we will plan on having a follow-up meeting with Mike and John to revamp the Stone Creek concept.
Excellent.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Thank
Have a
you.
great holiday, everyone.
You too.
Yep.
All right. That was our one item for today. So need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
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 You are adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Thanks for that little